Thank you all for joining another episode hosted by Institute for Greatness. This channel is designed to give the audience knowledge about what's happening around the world, to inspire you, and to let you know that while a lot of things may seem great on paper, in reality, people have to actually go through a difficult journey to get there. And part of today's episode is to understand the journey that Kenneth Cheng took in building his business. So we have the privilege of having Kenneth here today, who started out as an entrepreneur in Australia, running an e-commerce and trading business. And then he spent the next 16 years in consulting, digital transformation, and commercial leadership across global companies. After finishing his MBA, he decided to jump back into entrepreneurship, and this time through a search fund. He founded one of Singapore's first traditional search funds, Mission K Capital, and is helping pioneer the model in Southeast Asia. He's now 10 months into his search and is actively looking to acquire and operate a great business. So without further ado, Kenneth, great to have you here. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you, Anthony. Thanks for having me, and look forward to having a great chat ahead.
And it's funny. I remember I met you. It was through a drinks. It was I think it was like a event for like finance and banking or something, right? And then we just started chatting. So that was a
Yeah,
good way
that's
to get
right.
to know each other. All
Yeah,
right.
and I
Okay.
think we realized we had a lot in common that day itself. Sorry. Yeah,
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and we speak Cantonese as well. I remember
that's
you're
right.
from Malaysia. So great. So I want to start out by asking. So you start as an entrepreneur, went to an employee, back to being an entrepreneur. What was the biggest difference between being an employee and entrepreneur?
Um, I think I think time is one of those components. It's when I first left the corporate world. I had a lot of people kind of advise me about planning time and protecting your time. Um, what I didn't realize back then was I had the impression that, I'm gonna have too much time, and I'm just gonna have to plan stuff to do, right. But I was wrong. It was really intense. After coming out from the corporate world, I started Mission K Capital. I'm searching for a company. It was quite the reverse. It was really intense. I wake up much earlier right now. I go to bed much later. I've got so much going on in between, and the planning part is actually about protecting your time, to do the things that, outside of work, with family, with friends, and stuff like that. You can go on and on without actually doing, actually spending time with family. There's so much to do when it's in entrepreneurship, right? So time is one component. The other thing that I think was a big change for me was purpose. When I was an employee for the last 16 years, my purpose was to get a promotion, chase the next job title, chase the next paycheck, moving to the next role, and then you kind of do that over and over and over again, and then it gets tiring, right? And then for some people, and I think myself as well, I got lost somewhere in between of chasing all of that. One day I woke up, I was like, oh, what am I doing? Where am I, right? And the purpose became less and less clear. But now coming back into entrepreneurship, it's not easy, to be honest, but it's the opportunity for me to have a purpose that I can call my own. I can create something that I can call my own, and it's how I want to define it, right? How big, how small, and this purpose is perpetual, right? I can redefine it as I go along, and it's been really fulfilling at this to this point. So I think time, that's one thing, but I think the bigger one is the purpose of coming back into entrepreneurship.
Okay. So would you say you actually work harder now than before? Like in terms of number of
A
hours that
whole
you
lot,
put into work?
a whole lot more, and I can't complain. I can't complain. It's self-inflicted most of the time.
Right. But at least it's more within your control now, right, than being in the corporate world.
Yeah, I mean, what I don't say is I actually enjoy it. Like I get up earlier because I get excited about starting off the day, and I go to bed a bit later because I want to get stuff out and get the ball moving. So it's not something I dread. I actually get excited about doing the stuff that I do. There are good days, there are bad days, but generally, yeah, the work. I mean, the stuff that I do is quite fulfilling.
And I totally resonate with you on the purpose part. As you said, I like how you phrased it. It's perpetual, right? And then it's your purpose. But I mean, having said that, I think a lot of employees out there, they can still enjoy their work as long as they can
Oh,
define their
absolutely.
purpose, where the work that they do is aligned, right? It's all about alignment at the end of the day, whether you're an owner, you're an employee. So it's good. It's good to hear.
Absolutely.
So I want to understand a bit more about starting your business then, your current business, Mission K. Right now, do you have a business partner?
No, I'm what we call a solo traditional searcher.
Okay. What is the thought process behind being a solo searcher versus finding a partner? Because a lot of people say like, oh, if I'm going to start a business, I always need a co-founder. Sometimes it gets lonely to do it, to go it alone. So, what was your process behind being a solo searcher?
I put a lot of thought into this when I first started, and I mean, first of all, I want to say that it's merits to both options. Whichever way you go, I see the merits in both. I debated around it quite a lot, and when I was starting off the journey, I actually had a couple of people reach out who were really good people. You know, really complementary to my skill set. And yeah, we had the option of going either the partner route or the solo route. For me personally, the reason why I went down the solo path is because I feel this journey it's a very personal journey, and what I mean is that it's this whole journey is tied to my own family's aspirations and timeline as well. So when I came into this ETA, left the corporate world. I mean, a lot of this obviously has been discussed internally with my family, with my wife, right? It wasn't a hasty decision. When I came into this, it was 1.5 years in the planning before I jumped into it. It wasn't like a thing that I just woke up and then just went like, boom, I'm in, right? So it's been in the works for 1.5 years. Been kind of talking to my wife about it. We kind of worked out the timelines of when we go in, when we need to do certain things and stuff like that. So when I started to assess, or we started to assess whether we want to bring on a partner, I think there was a lot of merit. But I think where I personally thought that it may be better just go solo is because of goals and timelines. I have my own timeline, my family's timelines and aspirations and goals. If I started to layer on someone else's, which we will have to, right? Then it becomes complicated, and that was, I think, the primary reason why I went down on a solo path. It's a very personal reason. My family and I are on this journey with me. We have timelines. We just wanted to have the flexibility of prioritizing those things.
Got it. Okay. So speed is definitely a key consideration, and the fact that you don't have a co-founder doesn't mean you're really doing it alone, right? You have your family backing you, or in the sense that they can be there to kind of be your sounding board, or to support you along the way. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. So apart from my family, I have a group of investors, some whom I work a lot closer with, especially the guys from the region. I have mentors that I go to for certain topics. So I keep myself alive. I mean, around people who can add to where I am weak, or kind of supplement where I'm weak. That's how I kind of try to uh, mitigate those things without a partner.
Okay. So ultimately, it's about having a team around you that can complement you, or I mean supplement you as well, right? Whatever you don't know, it sounds like you have mentors who can assist you, but they don't necessarily have to be a co-founder of the business.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So now looking back at your journey so far, this is your second business. What are some of the lowlights and highlights as of being an entrepreneur? So you were an entrepreneur, say, almost 20 years ago when you came out of college to now you're being an entrepreneur again. Like, how is that different? And then, yeah, some of the lowlights, highlights.
Oh, interesting question. It's two very different models. I think when I first came out, this was in the early 2000s, and I think this whole tech startup concept wasn't really around yet. So for us, we were just starting out a business. But if I kind of relate back of what we were trying to do back in the early 2000s, is we were trying to be a tech startup, right? And without going into detail, we were trying to be the Alibaba of Australia before Alibaba really came around. And obviously, there was a lot of problems we couldn't solve back then and stuff like that. But that concept or that model was very much like a tech startup model, where we kind of had to start from scratch, kind of looking for product market fit, build something that wasn't around. That was what we did 20 years ago. Fast forward 20 years later, coming back into entrepreneurship, this time around through the ETA, or entrepreneurship through acquisition model, which I know you have spoke about in your previous podcast, and it's a concept that resonated with me more at this part of my life, not just from an age perspective, but also where I am in my life with the families and all that put together, right? I guess from a highlight and low light perspective, and I'll talk about it from a searcher's perspective, because I'm currently still in the search phase. I think from a highlight perspective, and hand to heart, in the last 10 months, I've learned so much. I have had the privilege of stepping into 120 different business owners' lives, getting to learn about how they started their business, learning about their industry, and what gets me really excited is when I understand how businesses work in those industries. What's their business model, and why do some businesses succeed, and why do some businesses don't do so well? When I understand that the economics behind the business and the industry, that gets me really excited. On top of actually listening and understanding the founder's story, that's always a big plus for me. I guess on the lowlights part is when you meet that many founders, or when you meet that many business sellers, sometimes you hear sad stories, things that didn't go so well. But I think one thing for me is it's like speed dating. Many times you see a business and a seller that you can really resonate with, and the business is really good. but the deal doesn't go through, or the transaction doesn't go through for whatever reason, right? And it's kind of like a breakup. And then it happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again. So the first time you're like, Kenneth, man up, pick yourself up, and let's go. And then it happens again, and then it happens again, and it happens again, and then it does get a bit. It can get a bit intense after the third or fourth time or fifth time when you see something really excited and you thought, yeah, this is the one, and then for whatever reason it doesn't go through. Heartbreak.
Okay. Well, how do you then overcome that constant rejection? What goes through your mind?
Staying disciplined is, or revisiting the thesis always gets me back on track. So revisiting the thesis and then staying disciplined to the thesis is what gets me back on track. When I started this, I had a thesis, and that thesis has been refined over time as I gain more knowledge about SMEs in Singapore and Malaysia, right? From an industry perspective, and then from a financial perspective, and what makes a great business. Whenever something falls through, it's always because it breaks one of the core principles of the thesis. And when that happens, I go back and I look at it as like, okay, well, it broke this core principle, and I know why this core principle is important. It makes me feel better, but there's still a couple of days where you just go like, right. But going back to the thesis and then staying disciplined to the thesis helps with moving on.
Okay, but just to double click on this point, right, which is and for most entrepreneurs too, which is after a lot of rejections, it's when people tell you, oh, your idea doesn't work, it makes no sense, like people keep telling you that. You start to question yourself, okay, do I need to revise my thesis to fit what people are telling me? Or do you continue to stay on track and say, I'm going to stick to my thesis, I'm not going to revamp it? So like, how do you strike that balance?
Well, I think there's a lot of people that's smarter than me out there, and I listen, and I've got good advisors around me as well, people that I can trust, and really smart people, my investor base, my mentors. I listen to anybody who wants to give me advice. Sometimes I am quick to know whether or not I have an opinion on that advice, but sometimes they say something that potentially but does make sense. I kind of let it sit on it and think about it, and then form my own conclusion after that. I'm not going to say that I'm the smartest guy on earth. I mean, I listen to everybody, but I try to make sense of it, and then create my own point of view, and then move on from there.
Okay. And so as long as all these data points tell you that your thesis is sound, despite these rejections, you stay on course with the conviction, say, okay, this is what I'm still going to pursue. That's going to be aligned with my thesis. Okay.
Yeah, I think over time, yes, I've cut a lot of the core principles have been tested in many different scenarios, has been tested with many different businesses that I've seen, and that those core principles tend to stay true.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because I think that's one question that a lot of founders, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they first start out, ask. Right? Is that am I wrong, or is the market wrong, or it's just that I just have to get more no's before I get that one yes? And that's a very cliche, right? The more no's I get only means closer to that one yes. But yeah, you're still young in your journey, so that's it's good that you're already learning so much, and it's actually good to get the no's up front. Actually, you'd be really concerned if you started out early, and then immediately all these people say yes, and yeah, let's just do the deal. You'd be like, Maybe my
Yeah.
hurdle was too low, right?
Yeah.
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 So in terms of your journey so far, what has been the biggest internal transformation?
Um, actually, I think it's very related to the last question, or the last comment I made, which is, as I go through the motions of speaking to sellers, getting excited about their business, finding great businesses out there. You know, there's a lot of really good businesses out there, and for whatever reason, there is always something that turns out to be hairy, or turns out to be this. There's a huge enterprise risk, or there's a huge stakeholder risk that's there. And as an entrepreneur, or as a searcher who wants to buy a business or wants to move to the next phase, I always say I'm kind of always looking at things positively, like, okay, let's look at this risk. What can we do with this? Can we mitigate it? Can we get around it? Can we push it down the road? And and I tend to always do that. And then I guess this is one of those advantages where you have, when you're in a traditional search fund, you have investors that are I've seen many search fund deals, and they know what are great search fund deals. So they tend to keep me honest and ask the right questions. So I guess, to answer your question, Anthony, the biggest transformation is having self-awareness, asking myself both the what can this be, and what is the risk, and then having the clarity of mind to to walk away from it if the we can't, if the risk is really too big for us to stomach, or it's a risk that we can't quantify at all, right? And I think it's important because I'm the one that's going to be operating the business. I mean, today it could be a risk that we talk about, but fast forward 6 months down the road, if we did acquire the business, it's a risk that I'm going to have to live with and deal with. That's two very different realities. Yeah, so I think, in short, it's the having the ability to be self-aware, knowing what's really what we can do, and what is a risk that we cannot deal with.
Okay. So self-aware and knowing when you can't do something, you're not equipped to do something, right? It's not always
Yeah.
yes to everything, and just being, in a sense, being authentic to yourself. Because as you said, once you own it, then yeah, it's with you for. I mean, people say it's even more than like a marriage, right? It's just with you forever, in a sense. That's how you have to think about it. You can't get out of it. So when you think about
Yeah, and I like how you.
right. Okay.
No, I was gonna say, that's. I like how you said be authentic with yourself, because I think that's one. That was one of the terms that my investors use. Be authentic with yourself, and I like that.
Yeah. Oh, it's true in many ways, right? It's not. There's no need to be kind of arrogant and pretend you know something when you don't, especially when it comes to full ownership of something, right? So it's
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. So just want to actually ask a couple questions on what you talked about earlier, the word risk, because you mentioned that quite a few times. So how do you kind of think about risk? Because when you say, oh, like, do I think about if I'm not comfortable with the risk, then I just don't go ahead. Is it something, it's a gut feel? It's just like, oh, it just feels risky. Or is it something you can quantify with a number? Or like, how do you make something that seems risky not as risky?
So first of all, I look at when I look at a business, there's generally three categories of risk that me and my investors, or I like to categorize. First one is transaction risk, transaction/stakeholder risk, which is the seller, and or risk with the transaction. Second one is operational risk, which is the business, whether or not the business in its current state of operations carry risk, key man risk, legal risk, and then there is the enterprise risk. The enterprise risk is typically more macro. Are we going into a business that is going to have significant macro headwinds? And is that something that is going to be very relevant to us? So, as we go along the process of identifying the business, we tend to look at, as we learn about the business more and more, we start to capture this risk. We rank them, and I think from the experience I've had, most of the businesses, for me at least, to answer your question, it's more methodical. So we categorize them, we rank them. I discuss that with my investors who have a lot more experience than I do when it comes to acquisition, and then we discuss the level of severity of the risk, right? Whether or not there is risk. So some people kind of rank customer concentration very high as a operational risk, which means that if you have a lot of revenue concentrated to one customer, that's operational risk for us. But then if you kind of peel the layer and then you kind of look at how much does it contribute and what is the quality of that customer and relationship and contract, is it high risk to the business where if there was a change of control, that customer automatically becomes may risk the person leaving. So we kind of have to peel the layer a bit more and understand how solid is this customer. If it's contractual, they have got a strong relationship, maybe it's something that can be mitigated. But yeah, so long answer, short answer is we categorize them, we look at it more methodically. We talk to people in the industry or people who have experience to understand where and how severe is the risk, and whether or not it's a risk that we can actually quantify and take on.
Okay. I like how you use the word peel to learn more about it. You can mitigate it. I think these are two words that sometimes people don't think about because, for example, a lot of career changers or people making a career pivot or trying to be an entrepreneur from an employee, they just say, oh my God, it's so risky, it's daunting. And then they step away from it. It's just very jarring to them, right? But as you said, if you peel the skin and you go deeper to learn more about it, you think, oh, it's actually not as bad. And if you can mitigate it, then that's even better, right? For example, I think we talked about in the past, maybe structuring, that's why people structure deals, right? Same company, but you structure in a way to mitigate the risk. So what seems daunting initially could be, oh, it's actually workable.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yes, we did have that conversation, and yeah, you can structure, you can structure a deal that helps with mitigating that risk as well. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. Yeah, I think life is when we deal with risk, there are ways to kind of structure around the risk. A good example would be when I meet people who are, say, trying to start a business, and they're like, oh, I don't want to give up my job right away. But as you said, right, it's like, well, you got to plan. It's not like immediately you jump into it, right? So you reduce the risk by using the time to plan, or you could have a side income, side business just to test it out before you jump into it. It's not that you go from one and you suddenly leap to the other, right? So there are a lot of ways, and yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think the word is really understanding more about the risk, and then how do you mitigate it? And there are always ways.
Yeah.
Usually there are ways to mitigate risks. Okay, so let's get into some of the juicier part, more about your company. So what makes your company unique? And if I was a operator, or I'm a seller, let's say, you're trying to convince me to sell to you, or an operator to work with you, so what do you tell them? Like, why should I work with you? What makes you unique?
So to the sellers, I always start off by introducing ourselves. First of all, I don't tell them we're a search fund or any of that jargon because I don't think they care, or it doesn't matter to them, right? So I tend to introduce ourselves as an entrepreneurial-led fund for two reasons. One is because my investors, 70% of them are founder operators from the region, which means they're accustomed to the way businesses are done. They have networks, and they're very successful businesses today. These are my investors. The other 40%, 35-40% are international, US and Europe-based search fund or funds or search fund investors. But before many of these principals started those funds, they themselves were entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of entrepreneurial DNA. The way we look at deals, the way we look at a company, there's a lot of discussion about what value do we bring. We look at it from a very entrepreneurial lens, not just the kind of finance lens, right? So we kind of marry those both because a lot of people have in my cap table actually have those two lenses, from the investor and from the operational side of things. So number one, we are very entrepreneurial in the way we look at what we can bring to the table. But I think what really resonates with a lot of the sellers that I speak to, and this is really genuinely me, is that I care about the stories of the founder. I care about, I'm distinctly curious about how they started their business. So I'll give you an example, right? Most of the time when I step into a meeting, I go to their office. There's no PowerPoint, no laptops, nothing. I have with me a pen and a piece of paper, a notebook. I spend about 5 minutes introducing myself, very similar to what I just said to you. And then I spend the next 55 minutes or 90 minutes, sometimes it goes to, listening to them telling me about their story. So I always ask, Mr. Tan, tell me about how you started this business and tell me about your journey. And yeah, we spend the next 50 minutes, 55 minutes, sometimes an hour and a half, kind of just him telling me how he started, the ups, the downs, and why he's doing it, why he's doing this right now. And every story is unique and it's very interesting. So I walk away, number one, feeling that kind of we have chemistry. We build a chemistry. We build chemistry behind these two person talking, right? The buyer, the seller. But it's not just the buyer, the seller. It's two people talking, listening to the how he built it. We build chemistry. Objectively, selfishly, that is one way that we tend to, or at least I tend to, do my transactions, because if I can relate and resonate with the business owner, that whole process of getting through to close becomes a lot better. But also distinctly curious about what the seller story is. Right? So that's, I guess that's my differentiating factor. I am distinctly curious about who the seller is, what they have done, and whether or not we have chemistry.
Okay, it's a very interesting point because a lot of people think that of course valuation is important, right? At the end of the day, is yes, you want to maximize profit, but as you mentioned, there are a lot of scenarios where people don't necessarily sell at the highest price. And there are many factors, right? And what you said earlier about listening to their story kind of reminds me of just being a parent. Because when you talk to any parent and they ask you about your journey or how did you raise your child or something, right? And building the business is kind of raising your own child. And parents always love talking about it, right? They can't stop talking about how they raise their kids. So I can kind of resonate with. Okay, sorry.
No, so I'm guilty of that as well.
Yeah, and it's just, I think it's part of just human connection, as you said, because they are kind of handing, in many ways, they're handing a baby over to you to raise or to make better, right? So they do care about the fact that you care about how they did all this. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's very useful for the audience. So then, in terms of how about in terms of operators, what is the unique point in?
Um, and this is a question that
Mm,
I tend to ask myself along the way as well. Like, every time I meet a seller, I ask myself, okay, why is he going to sell to me? Um, and what value do I bring to the table? Um, and and sometimes there's different answers, but generally speaking, and I'll give you an example later. Right? Generally speaking, when it comes to financial barriers, one of the things that I've realized as a search fund, this is a model thing, right? Is and this is how we stand out, is that we step into operations. We solve the problem of the operator problem, and especially when we talk about solving the succession problem, because many SME owners, first generation founders who are now looking to retire and do not have a successor for whatever reason, we solve that problem. We pay the fair price, we step in, we run the operations, and we continue to grow their legacy for the next X years, right? The financial buyers tend not to have that ability because they usually take either a significant majority or significant minority, but the operator has to stay on, or they bring in professional managers. But most of the time, I try to differentiate myself. Coming back to the question of why would they sell to me, I try to differentiate myself by, first of all, they're looking at the person who is going to continue
mm,
their legacy. There's there isn't a team behind. There isn't layers and layers of partners. You're looking at the guy, right? So people tend to find
mm,
comfort in that. It's like, okay, this is the guy, right? Do I feel comfortable with him? Is there chemistry? Do you know about their business? Then only comes whether or not the price is fair. I'll give you an example. Every time I go into a seller meeting, especially if it's one that is, I think, has high potential, I do a lot of research about the company first.
mm,
There was a company that we were looking into. They're a wholesale distribution business. Um, and before I actually went to the meeting, we actually went mystery shopping, to understand the products that they have, who are their customers, their client base. So by the time we sat down with them, we had quite a good grasp on their industry, their company, and especially their products. The meeting kind of started off with them being quite defensive, like, who's this guy? He's here, want to buy my business. Who does he think he is, right? And as the conversation goes, like I said, we went through the motion of him telling me how they started their business. There was two founders, how they started their business, how they expanded, the challenges they went through, um, the defense mechanism. The defense that they were less defensive,
mm,
right? And then where things really took a turn was when um, there was a little cabinet on the side of the meeting room, and there was a flyer that was sticking out, or a brochure that was sticking out. And I just looked at it. I was like, oh, okay. Um, it was a product I've not seen before. By now we'd have seen the websites. We went mystery shopping. I said, like, oh, I've not seen that product before. Is it a new product, or is that an obsolete product? And both of them were shocked, right?
mm,
It was basically a new product that is due to be launched in a month's time. They haven't done any marketing. They haven't done any. Uh, um, they haven't done any marketing. They haven't told anybody. It's not on any website. So they were both shocked at how much we knew about their product base and their product catalog. And then the relationship just changed from there. You know, we every time we had a conversation, there was a lot more trust, especially them knowing knowing that we know their business. We bring up examples of their customers that we have visited, and we ask them questions, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is the reason for this happening is because of this." So a lot of trust built up front, very relationship driven, and you know, coming back to your question of why would they sell to me is because of a lot of it is because of that chemistry, knowing their business, and then the fair price, and then the pricing comes. Yeah, you could say that, absolutely.
Got it. That's a very good point. So now you brought up, you're very relationship driven, and that was actually a good example of what that means. And ultimately, the way I think about it is the personal connection. Somehow you're able to connect with them better, and that applies to a lot of scenarios in life, right? Like people getting a job. It's like, oh, how come I don't get a job? I keep sending out resumes or applying.
Absolutely.
But somehow you're just not building a connection with whoever's on the other side, where it sounds like you're able to do that. Okay, no, that's very helpful. It's not an easy skill to develop. It takes time, and it sounds like you have that, which is good. So one more question I want to ask is, what are some of the misconceptions that people have in buying an SME business in Singapore and Malaysia?
I think it's very similar to the last. I'll take a lot from the last question. I think a lot of people tend to think that it's all about the money. You know, I have capital, I have money. You know, as I speak to some of the searchers, especially the folks that are freshly coming into into this space, right? A lot of them think about capital. I have capital, you know, just want to go out there and buy a great business. Yeah, I mean money is important, and to a certain extent, there's a price to everything. But at least from the conversations that I have, the experiences that I've had is money is important, but it's usually not the first, also probably not the second thing that comes to mind for a founder. You know, the people that really drive really good businesses, that drives really good culture, takes care of the people. I mean, all this transcends part of the great business. Tend to look for whether or not they have chemistry with the buyer, or whether or not you know their industry, whether you know their business, and then comes the price, right? So, to your question, the common misconception is capital is one thing. It's not usually the first thing or the second thing. The first thing and second thing is chemistry, knowledge of the business, then comes the price.
Okay. No, thanks you for reiterating that point. Yeah, because I think, as you said, a lot of people do have that misconception. It's all about the money, but it's not. It's about, again, handing over a child or a baby over to somebody else who can hopefully raise them even better, do bigger and better things.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Kenneth. This was very insightful. Really appreciate your sharing your journey, the different ups and downs, and how you're a very modest person in being self-aware of what you don't know, which is very important. It's important for our audience to know that, it's okay to just speak up and say you don't know something. It's not always about saying yes. So with that, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Institute for Greatness, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks, Kenneth.
Thanks, Anthony.
Bye.